I'm rather joined now by a friend of mine, Mark. We've been talking about this reality that in this period of lockdown, when everything's changed, we sort of get a glimpse of what happens to lots of us in our lives. That we have plans, we have dreams, we've got life sort of set up, and then something happens beyond our control and outside of our circumstances that hit us, affect us, change us, and it causes us to like evaluate things, and it's often in those moments where we can experience something of God's love reaching down to us. Mark's got a great story of his own life, tragic but redemptive, of what Jesus does for someone. Mark, it's great to have you with us. Thanks
Thank you, Craig.
for doing this on this weird forum. But just
Yes.
tell us what happened to you that sort of was outside of your control. But that you were impacted by. Tell us like a little bit about your story.
Okay, so 11 years ago, I was a pub landlord. Business was good, and I had plans for what I thought were my future. But one evening, there was an explosion in the pub, and I ended up in a coma for 5 weeks. When I come out of the coma, my life had changed dramatically. I had changed. I had a list of injuries. My brain was damaged in 2 parts. My hearing was affected. My lungs were burnt. I took in 42% carbon monoxide. And I was unable to walk for a long time. All my veins had collapsed, and all my muscles had collapsed as well. So life was crazy. But I realized at that time, all I wanted was my life to get back to what I thought was normal. I was hopeless. I was worthless. And it was a crazy, crazy time in my life. Crazy for my family, crazy for everybody that was around me. But I didn't understand the extent of the damage to me personally. I tried to get back to work because that's what I'd always done to work. And then there was an event that took place, a very serious event, which landed me in prison. I thought my life was over. Everything that was normal to me was stripped away. But while I was in prison, in this really dark, horrible place, one day another prisoner said to me, why didn't I go to church? Why don't I go to church? I was very angry, really angry. I was filled with self-pity, poor me. And once I got over that anger and I went back to my cell, I started shouting out. I now know I was shouting out to God, but at that time I didn't know. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go to church just to get out of this cell for an hour. I put my name down, and the following week the officers come to take me to church. Now, it was that going to church which changed my life. I know that Jesus met me at the church door. I had an instant realization of something happening in my body. It was like these lights, they were blue lights, came alight in my body. And I just knew something had happened to me. I didn't know what. And I went into the church service. I heard what I now know as a sermon, and they were talking about the road to Emmaus, 2 disciples walking, talking about the death of their friend Jesus. And Jesus walked alongside them. I heard that sermon, and I just understood it. And also, there's one of the songs they sang was "Shine, Jesus, Shine." And although I was in this really dark place in my life and in prison, there was like a light just came into my life. And I thought, oh my God, there's something happening to me here. And then I went back to my cell. Going back to my cell, I just felt this compulsion to start reading the Bible. I'd never read the Bible. But I asked the officers for a Bible, and they gave me a Good News large print Bible, and I was able to start reading it. And I started reading it, and it didn't make any sense to me. Actually, I thought parts of it were very cruel, because lots of people were being killed, and I didn't understand it. Then I got to Isaiah chapter 40, verse 28, and it says, "Don't you know, haven't you heard? The Lord is the everlasting God. He created all the world. Nobody understands his thoughts." But then in verse 31 it says, "For those who trust in the Lord for help will find their strength renewed. They will rise on wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. They will walk and not get weak." And I just remember in that moment, lifting my head and my hands to God and saying, "God, are you speaking to me here? Are you telling me I'm going to be able to walk properly? Are you saying I'm going to be able to run?" And I just clearly heard him say, "Yes, my son." And that changed my life forever, forever. I realized, although I was in that cell, locked up, I was in a really dark place. It was right I was there, and I had a time then to reflect on my life, and I realized that I hadn't always been a good person. I would have liked to have thought I had, but as I started stripping down my life, I realized I hadn't. Yet God, in his perfect love, came to me in that place. So fast forward from that, when I came out of prison, I had to start building up a whole new life, because everything that I thought was normal had changed. I'd always been self-sufficient. I'd always worked, but now I couldn't work. Like I say, my brain had been damaged, my hearing, the damage to my lungs. So it took a long time then to rehabilitate, and I've gone through so much different types of treatment. But mentally, I was in a bad place. It took me a long time to accept that. And then I had to go on many different types of counselling to try and untangle the trauma of what had happened, and how my actions had affected other people as well. So it was a real bizarre time of life, and trying to build new relationships with my family, with friends around, because I changed.
Yeah.
But the constant in my life has been Jesus. When I came out of prison, I went to a local church in Canterbury, and they just accepted me with love and helped me to grow in God's love. And then from there, I went to Kennelly Church, and then I started coming to Brackla Tabernacle. And life has just grown and developed. I met my wife, Carolyn, in Brackla Tabernacle, and we had both been living in this world for between us 100 years. And God had a lot of work to do in us. And we courted for 3 years, and then we got married at Brackla Tabernacle. So why am I saying all this? Because 11 years ago, my life wasn't going on this path. It was going on a totally different path. But my life changed. But thank God, he came and met me where I was, and now he walks with me every day. Fast forward, I've now been able to start doing some part-time work, and I work for a drugs agency, helping people that are either addicted or dependent on alcohol or drugs. This was a path that I could never have foreseen taking. And when my brain specialist told me it was time to start looking for some volunteer work, my choice was to go and volunteer with some charities that had helped me. But because of my prison record, they wouldn't accept me. And then I applied to the agency that I now work for as a volunteer. And when I went for my interview to become a volunteer, the lady that was interviewing me, she asked me, "Who do I look up to?" And I said, "I look up to Jesus." And she said, "Jesus? Who's Jesus?" And I then had a chance to explain to her who Jesus is. And I wasn't sure if I was going to even be accepted after that, but I did. I got accepted onto a volunteer course. Then I had a chance to do volunteer work for them. And thank God, I got an opportunity to apply for a part-time job. When I was going for my interview, I was driving through Swansea, and I looked up, and I seen at the bottom of Wine Street in Swansea, the city gate. I was fretting about all the things I didn't know. But as I looked up and read that sign, I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, Mark, enter the city gates with praise and thanksgiving. So I started to praise God and thank God for all that he's done for me and what he's doing right now. And I went for my interview, and thank God I got the job. It was a time of fretting for me, but thank God he turned it into a real special time.
Yeah, I mean, like you've articulated brilliantly the reality of like what can sometimes happen to us when life just all of a sudden changes, that we don't know when it'll happen, if it'll happen, but sometimes life just changes.
Absolutely.
And how God is always present.
Yeah.
But if we can just, in the moment of big change, just listen in, make the right calls to listen in,
yeah,
we find that he's always there waiting for us.
Absolutely.
You said then about how Jesus then came and rescued and changed, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
26 years or whatever it was as a pub landlord, now you're looking after people who are addicted to alcohol. As a certain level of irony and humor with it too. Like, tell us just briefly then in closing, what does Jesus mean to you now?
Jesus is my life. What I love about being a Christian is I am totally accountable to Jesus. My thoughts, my words, my deeds. I am certainly not a perfect person, but I try to do good. God has taught me to be able to listen to people, to be patient with people, and also to be patient with myself. Sometimes I want life to just change the way I want it. But God has taught me life isn't like that. He's helped me to be more loving and more caring, and teaches me when to take a step back from things. Just wait on him. Craig, I don't know if I can just say this. I'm just being reminded you. There was a time when I had gone to try and get some help, and I couldn't get any help. And I had kept hearing from God that I will heal your wounds. I will heal your wounds. And there was a charity that had set up in Porthcawl, which was called Healing the Wounds. And I was encouraged to write a letter to them. They were helping veterans. I'm not a veteran. But a testimony of one of their veterans was on the Gazette this one Thursday day. And I read it, and I thought, that's exactly how I feel. So I contacted the charity to ask if there was a way they could direct me to get some help with what they were giving the veterans. And they told me, rightly so, because I wasn't a veteran, they couldn't support me or help me. But if I wanted to send a letter to them, they keep it on file, and if ever one of their practitioners had some time, they would speak to me. Well, I did that, and I didn't hear nothing from them. But then about 12 weeks later, I got a telephone call from them. And they say, Mark, are you still looking for help? Yes. Well, we still cannot help you, but if you'd like to come and speak to one of our practitioners on Friday, we'll make some time for you. And I went, and I was being assessed by Rachel. And during the assessment, she got called out to take a telephone call. And when she got called out, when she came back in, she was a bit dismayed. And I said, well, are you okay? And this is how my life has turned out. So she said to me, well, we had a veteran that was due to come in on Friday, to come in next Friday for some treatment, which has been now booked and paid for. But now he's not going to be able to come. And she said, I don't know what we're going to be able to do about it. And then she said to me, what are you doing next week? And I said, nothing. So she said, would you like to take that place? And I did. And then I went on a 4-day healing treatment thing with something called NLP. And that opened up a new door for me because I had treatment. I then became an NLP practitioner. And one of my volunteer roles I do now, I go into Cardiff Prison the place that I was 11 years ago. But I now go in as a volunteer on it's called the Phoenix program, and it's working with veterans that are in prisons. So this particular one is in Cardiff. So I go as a volunteer now and work with veterans that are in Cardiff prison.
Wow.
So 10 years ago, I couldn't get the help I needed, but through a veterans charity, I was provided some help. And thank God, he now gives me many opportunities to work with other veterans who are suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
I only say that because something that was so bad, God has now turned it around for good. And I got many testimonies in my life to testify to that.
Yeah. So like, we'll wrap it up here, but like this story of pub landlord now helping people addicted to alcohol, prisoner now helping people in prison, and all through the encounter with Jesus, that sets us up, that changes our lives, and through following him, redeems, changes, transforms.
Yeah.
That what we never saw coming, he's able to change. So Mark, thanks ever so much for joining me, and really appreciate our time together. Thanks very, very much indeed.